welcome back here with us on Urban Debate on Mirror Now. Viewers, there has been a big twist in sedition law debate. Centre has told the Supreme Court that it has decided to re-examine and reconsider the provisions of Section 124A. Centre also urged top court to defer hearing on petitions challenging the constitutional validity of the law until such exercise is carried out before an appropriate forum. What does this climb down really mean? Many are calling it a U-turn. Let's go across to Ashwani Kumar, former Union Minister for Law and Justice, who is joining us live on Urban Debate on Mirror Now this evening. Mr. Ashwani Kumar, thank you for joining us here on Urban Debate on Mirror Now. Good to have you on the show today. Till 2 days back, Centre's statements on sedition law appeared to suggest that, it's not really ready to let go of this law from Indian law books. But today, what the Centre has told Supreme Court appears to be a U-turn. How will you like to respond to what the Centre said today in the affidavit?
Well, I think it's never too late to rectify a wrong. This is a moment in our history when the national consciousness is revolting against the abuse and misapplication of the archaic, colonial, and wholly unnecessary sedition law in the country. I know that just because a particular provision of the law is abused does not mean that there's a case for its repeal. But sedition law is entirely different. It was brought on the statute book during the colonial era and is meant to suppress the freedom fighters. In a free country dedicated to humanitarian values, whose main defining feature is the Constitution of India, with a dignitarian and libertarian ethos running throughout the length and breadth of the document. We don't need a law which has been abused, is likely to be abused, and the nation can do without it because there are several other legal provisions on various statute books that are enough to arm any government to curb a genuinely seditious activity. So I think the government's decision is a right decision at the right time, if only it were to lead to a repeal of this law. I most sincerely hope that this is not a way of detracting from the issue. And in any case, the Supreme Court of India is not bound to grant an adjournment for the time that the government wishes. But if the government is serious about it, it should set upon itself a time limit and tell the court that it would complete its review process favorably in favor of repeal of law within, let's say, 8 weeks or so. That would be a right balance in the whole circumstances of the case.
Interesting. You say right decision at the right time, but in the affidavit, because the Centre has not specified any time frame for its reconsideration or re-examination of the sedition law, can it also be seen as an attempt to delay what the Supreme Court is planning to do in this regard?
I just elaborated in my answer that it is a right decision only if the review were to be taken within a timeline, within a fixed time frame, and lead to the conclusion that the law needs to be repealed and abrogated. If indeed it is used as a device to delay the decision by the Supreme Court, it would be clearly unfair and malified. I sincerely hope this will not happen, considering the fact that an affidavit has been filed by what many commentators on television have said at the intervention of the Honorable Prime Minister to suggest that the government is willing to review the law. And a comprehensive review process, I have no doubt, should, consistent with the mandate of the Constitution, consistent with the spirit and soul of Article 21, persuade the government to repeal the law. And I sincerely hope that this will happen. After all, there is a tipping point in the history of a country. And that tipping point, as far as the people's endurance with the sufferance of this law is concerned, has now been arrived. This is the time for government to repeal the law. I earnestly hope and pray that it will repeal the law.
Okay, but Mr. Ashwani Kumar, given the muscular nationalist political position BJP has taken in the recent years, do you think it's going to be really easy? Because look at the timeline here. Just before the hearing last time, Centre tells Supreme Court, we need a little more time to think about it. And now, when final, deadline was given by Supreme Court to the Centre to file an affidavit to tell Supreme Court about its stand on sedition law, suddenly Centre comes out with another affidavit saying, just before the hearing, meanwhile, that, defer the hearing because we are now ready to re-examine and review or reconsider this particular sedition law.
Well, it's a progressive change in the very least. I mean, of course, they are now willing to tell the Supreme Court, and they have made a statement before the highest court that they are willing to reconsider the law. But let me tell you, the same statement was made at some point of time with regard to the anti-custodial torture law, but nothing has happened so far. I sincerely hope that the government will live up to the expectations of the people of this country to usher in an era in which draconian laws like the Sedition Act, like the UAP, etc., are not abused and misused to destroy the dignity and liberty of individuals. The Constitution is meant to protect the dignity of the individual, which centers around his freedom and liberty. And we have seen in the last several months the blatant and brazen abuse of this law all over the country, irrespective of whichever government or party is in power. And that is a very frightening development. The number of cases slapped on people under the sedition law in the past several months is more than what has happened in all these years since independence. So certainly something is wrong with the way we are using very draconian laws of the past, which today have no justification in a free country, in a democratic country, in a country wedded to liberalism, pluralism, equality, liberty, and dignity of the individual. I sincerely hope that the decision of the government to review the law moves in the right direction, and the review process is completed no more than 8 weeks from now. And during that time, the Supreme Court can take the view what it wants to take. I'm nobody to advise either the court or the government in that regard.
Okay, not just this government, but the previous government as well at the center was accused of abusing and misusing sedition law many a times. In fact, be it Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru or Mrs. Indira Gandhi, all who have also, given in a way teeth to sedition law the way it carries today. Now, I want to then understand from you, given the current circumstances, Mr. Ashwani Kumar, what can now be expected in the Supreme Court tomorrow? The petitions are before the apex court. So what should we now look forward to?
Well, first of all, let me tell you that there's no comparison with the aberrations that may have taken in the past. And it is not my case that this is the first time that this sedition law has been misused. It could have been misused in the past. I don't have the figures, but I know for certainty that there is no comparison with what happened in the past and what is happening now. So I think to draw parallels with the past will be wholly unfair and unjust. As far as the hearing in the Supreme Court tomorrow is concerned, I cannot really predict what will happen. But it is not unusual for the court in a matter like this to concede the request of the government on the assumption that the government will come back urgently and expeditiously to the court and disclose the results of its review process. If the Supreme Court, in its wisdom, does decide to grant time to the government, and because the summer vacations are upon us, in any case, the matter will have to go beyond the vacation. And therefore, if the Supreme Court is inclined to grant time to the government to have a relook itself on the sedition law, it can keep the case pending, and it can even proceed to hear arguments in part, but not pronounce the judgment till after the time given for the review of the sedition law is over. Or it may say no to the government, which I think is unlikely.
Okay, interesting. Thank you very much, Mr. Ashwani Kumar, for joining us here on Urban Debate on Mirror Now this evening. We'll, of course, keep a close watch on what happens in the Supreme Court tomorrow, because ahead of that crucial hearing, a new twist has come in this entire debate, with Centre on its own now telling the Supreme Court that it's ready to re-examine and reconsider the sedition law. Thank you very much for joining us here on Urban Debate. With this, it's a wrap. Thank you for staying with us here on Urban Debate on Mirror Now. Heading into